we have a three-way tie atop the AFC South right now, including the Colts. Colts, Texans, and Jags are all now 8-6.
Glorious.
The Jags are still technically in first due to all the tiebreakers. The Colts are the number 7 seed. Texans are the number 8 seed at 8-6. We are ready for 3 weeks of just craziness trying to unpack this playoff situation. But a big win for the Colts. It didn't start good at all. The Steelers got up 13-0 with blocked punt, setting up a short touchdown. But, man, this was it, man. The Colts just ran away with it after that.
Mm-hmm. We got Steve Kornacki on speed dial. Get him in here, break down the scenarios.
We should get him on the pod for one day to just rattle them all off.
Oh, God, really?
I think for maybe post-Christmas week, a good show would be us throwing – because I've joked about I should just read all the playoff scenarios as a show. But why would I do that when there's a guy who does that? So, like, we could just be like, we'll show up, pitch it to Kornacki, let him go for an hour, and read off every scenario.
We could just leave and come back, and then, Yeah, I mean, I would say there's a reason that's a joke, you know? I don't know that would make great podcasting. No.
I have a new pet peeve, Sam, that I was tweeting through last night. The teams that we're talking about clinching in competition for the number 1 seed.
Mm-hmm.
Every social media team is just rolling out there 49ers clinched graphics. Like, it's week 15. We know they're going to the playoffs. They're battling for the number 1 seed. No, we're celebrating the teams clinching the playoffs right here in week 15. The Ravens clinched a playoff spot last night. It's big news. It's big news.
Yeah. The ones that were...
We don't celebrate expected accomplishments, is what I like to say.
Okay, Roy Keane. The ones that are kind of annoying to me is where it's like Dallas gets wrecked, and then in the midst of other, games, clinch a playoff spot. And it's like, well, number one, we knew that anyway. Like, of course they were making the playoffs. And number two, they just got destroyed. It's not the time to talk about it.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, I'm not going on the rant right now. I'm just saying, a little pet peeve.
Okay.
Nice game by Gardner Minshew here. Another not so great game by Mitch Trubisky on the other side.
Awful
for the Steelers.
The word.
Kind of got benched at the end, I guess, by Mason Rudolph. For Mason Rudolph. I think Rudolph will end up having to start next week. I don't think Kenny Pickett's ready.
So Tomlin was sort of saying they've been asking about Pickett's timeline heading into this game, and he basically was like, I'm not even thinking about that going into this game. Ask me after, type of thing. And then it was like after, it's like, well, what about now? So they were sort of saying there's a chance he can go this week, but it is probably a week of Mason Rudolph, which, it's Christmas. It's fitting. It should be Rudolph at Christmas. Frankly, even if Pickett was healthy, it should be Rudolph at Christmas.
Got to go with Rudolph.
Right.
I mean, who else is going to lead the Steelers through this darkness of a 3-game stretch, 3-game losing streak against bad teams? Two against bad teams.
And because of this game, Tomlin now needs to go 2-1 to finish the season to save his record of never having a losing season come what may.
And what do they have here?
It's not easy. It's Cincinnati at home, then it's at Seattle, and then it's at Baltimore. They need 2 out of those 3 to go their way to save that record. This was ugly by the Steelers. Like, did you see that video of George Pickens? I mean, the lack of effort across the board from this Pittsburgh team, which, by the way, it's not like, the Jets defense has had some plays this year where there's a lack of effort. You're like, I get it. Their season went up in smoke after 4 snaps this year. It makes sense for that unit to be like, I'm done with this in week 15 when their offense stinks every single week, and to just be like, forget this. The Steelers are in playoff contention. Like, they are somehow in good standing despite the team not actually being that great. Why have they got players not giving 100% effort? Like, the kind of the way this receiver room in particular keeps losing heart and stopping playing. Like Deontay Johnson, George Pickens now, Chase Claypool before that. I mean, the whole thing obviously sort of goes back to Antonio Brown when he finally unspooled. But, like, it's amazing the group of players that they have that this seems to keep coming back with. I don't know if there was this idea that the Steelers can just draft any wide receiver and they come good. Like, if they actually specifically target these guys that are potential attitude problems, They should probably stop doing that because it seems like it's actually starting to become a problem now.
Well, we had that listener before the season theorize. Was it like, is Tomlin reading these guys, or is he finding these guys first and like keeping them in line for a certain amount of time, and then you lose control?
But if part of the magic in this drafting strategy is, we can target guys in the second or third round that other teams will be passing on because they're like a pain in the ass. There's a reason they're a pain in the ass, or there's a reason other teams are passing on them, and you appear to be experiencing that at the moment. So while George Pickens is immeasurably talented, like if you can't stop him going 5 minutes before he throws his toys out of the pram and, goes off in a sulk on the sideline, you're going to have a problem.
Yeah, I mean, I think just as problematic for me was the first interception by Mitchell Trubisky. I mentioned on social media the other day, like, I know that the Steelers were up 13-7. Trubisky basically throws a jump ball to George Pickens against a safety, right? To me, that's always not a good decision, but it's not a turnover-worthy play decision. Like George Pickens should win that. And he gets bodied at the catch point by Nick Cross for an interception.
There's not a huge amount of difference between that and the T. Higgins catch, where Jake Browning throws up a pair. Caleb Evans is in better position than the safety to go win that.
There's not. That is, for me, I don't know what we ended up grading the Browning throw, but for me, those are essentially zero throws.
Right, they're comparable.
I joke about those being not 50-50 balls. They're about 20-80 balls historically. But if you have a Higgins, you have a Pickens, there's probably a higher, success rate. And so that ball should not turn into an interception more times than not, right? And it did. And so that's just as problematic for me as the George Pickens effort level.
Last year, George Pickens caught 68% of his contested catches, right? This year, it's 29%. Like, for a guy who is sort of billed as contested catch hero, spectacular catch guy, sideline wonder, not necessarily going to separate as well as some other receivers, you cannot catch 29% of your contested targets. Now, that's a wildly volatile number, right? Which is why we always talk, don't lean on that as your first selling point of a guy. But if you are only catching 29% of your contested targets in a given season, as that skill set, you're having a bad year. And that's what George Pickens is having right now.
Want to give full credit to the Colts defensive line.
Again.
Yes. They pressured Trubisky on, I think it was 50% of his dropbacks.
And it felt like it.
But they also had several other quick wins that didn't become pressures. Again, that'll show up in their grading. So just from it goes both ways. The Steelers' pass protection grade is one of the worst we've seen this entire season. The Colts' pass rush grade was 90.1. DeForest Buckner, Samson Ebukam. I mean, those guys got after it. Lots of quick pressures. Ebukam with 7 total pressures, a couple sacks. Dayo Odiengbo got in there on 20 rushes, had 3 times that he tackled Mitch Trubisky. I don't know how many official sacks he had, three by our numbers. Really impressive job by this Colts defensive line. And Gardner Minshew played a pretty clean game.
Yeah.
He's going to be interesting, too, because he's another guy that we always talked about the turnover-worthy plays earlier this year. That was never really how Minshew played, at least not that level of bad.
Not that extreme, yeah.
Right, so I think Minshew's actually, he should continue to get better, even though they were technically producing and winning with him not playing at a high level earlier in the year. So Colts remain feisty and intriguing here. Also, breakout game for Trey Sermon on the ground.
Huge game for Trey Sermon. A big part of them just sort of running the game out for a lot of it. And then Najee Harris had one of those games where, the play that everybody hates where you freeze frame it. You're like, oh, this running back has terrible vision. Look at this snapshot of a wide open space over here.
The one I saw was actually right.
Yeah. And it was video, which makes it worse. Like you actually see the play develop and you're like, I don't have a good excuse for this. Like a lot of those running back plays, even if it looks really bad in a snapshot, you can see why the running back ignored what seems to be a giant gap and instead headed into the teeth of hell. Najee Harris actually ran towards the leverage of the defensive lineman and away from the leverage of his blocker that was opening up a giant yawning chasm of space off left guard, I think. I mean, if you're at that level right now, you are broken as a running back. Like you're not seeing it. Whether or not you can get it back, I don't know. But you're not seeing it right now, and that's how you get to 12 carries for 33 yards.
I don't know how many people remember the Trent Richardson screenshot that was going around. That was like 10 years ago.
Right.
But if they do, that was like the wrong thing, right? Because people are suggesting he cuts back on power and that he would have actually run into 2 defenders. It was like the wrong thing to screenshot. The Najee play that you're talking about, cutting back into the leverage, was not good.
Even if, I mean, ironically, the Trent Richardson thing was sort of indicatively correct, right? Like, he did tend to do that.
It was the wrong screenshot.
Not on that play.
Yes, absolutely. Good win by the Colts, and not great by the Steelers. They started 7-4, man, and they're over at 7-7 right now.
As I say, they now need to go 2-1 against 3 pretty decent teams to save Tomlin's record.